Progress.
Ooh. Ready? Oh, let me get my glasses on. Oh. Good morning. I would like to call the June 2nd, 2023 Special City Council meeting to order. I would like to point out that this meeting is being hosted through the live stream by Zoom teleconference. I would like to remind council to have their microphones turned on and positioned so the audience can hear. City Clerk, may we have roll call?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Krupa.
Here.
Councilmember Peterson.
Here.
Mayor Protem Lowenthal.
Here.
Mayor Mills.
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you. I'm not sure who's here for the invocation. Is anyone here for the invocation? Dale, can you? Dale, our finance officer or treasurer or something. What are you, Dale?
Well, officially say treasure.
Okay, treasurer.
Let's pray. Father, we come before you this morning to commit this meeting into your hands. You've said very clearly in your word that if we ask your guidance, you will give it to us. We need your guidance in the city. We can talk about the finances. And we just pray that all that's done here today will be guided by you. Pray now in Jesus' name.
Amen. If you'll face the flag, please, and hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. There is a 3-minute per person time limit for all public comments. All who wish to speak, including council members and staff, need to be recognized by the mayor before speaking. For those that wish to join by Zoom, you will be asked to raise your hand if you would like to speak. We will take public comments for items listed on the agenda. Do we have any public comments?
We have no public speaker cards, Mayor, but I'd like to call out on the Zoom call. Now is the time to raise your hand. And if you just raise your hand, I'll unmute you and you'll be live with the City Council. And we do have one registered speaker, Teresa Acuna. Teresa, you are live with the City Council.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. So, Teresa Cunha, I live in the Solera Diamond Valley community, which lines Fisher Street, Mustang Way, Thornton, and Warren Roads. We've lived here since 2014. Since 2017, Fisher, Thornton, and Mustang have become Hemet's drag racing streets. There are no speed limit signs along these streets, specifically Fisher and Thornton. People drive through Fisher and Mustang as if it was a drag strip. At night, we deal with people doing donuts at the intersections of Rosehaven and Paseo Famosa. People also use Paseo Famosa as a shortcut to Fisher at 50 miles an hour in a 25-mile-per-hour zone. I have been working with Sergeant Gomez of Hemet PD just yesterday of the Traffic Division, advising him of these issues and seeking his insights and solutions. However, we also need the help from the city of Hemet. There have been many in our area who have come to the city of Hemet for assistance, and we are still waiting for something to be done. We would like to see some solutions for the speeding in our area included in the Safe and Clean Street initiative before there is a serious or fatal incident. With the new development coming in north of Solera Diamond Valley Homes, there will be a lot of younger people walking these streets, and it's just a matter of time before there's a serious to fatal incident. Perhaps paint the speed limit on the streets of Fisher and Mustang and have Hemet PD patrol this area more often. We pay taxes and deserve the same attention as other areas of Hemet. I love our city of Hemet and want to help make it a safer place to live. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
If there's anyone else on the Zoom call, now is the time to raise your hand, and we'll just give you a few moments. Seeing none, Mayor, there's no further public comment.
Thank you, City Clerk. Now we will move on to our discussion items. City Manager, may we please have a report on the discussion terms? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and good morning, everyone. Today is a workshop for us to take steps towards developing an update to our strategic plan. And one of the items I mentioned to you in my interview process and several times since is I'm impressed that the city had a strategic plan before I arrived. It's an important document that helps guide the work that the city does, and I appreciate the fact that the council took the time to put together this document in partnership with staff in 2021. And the version that we have on our website today is referred to as the 2022 strategic plan. So the steps that we'll be taking today are the building blocks for updating this for the fiscal year 23-24 fiscal year. So before we begin, I want to say thank you and acknowledge our staff who are here today to help you with any clarification on issues and items that we see on some of the paperwork. They've also been behind the scenes hard at work identifying options and action items for us over the following fiscal year. And they're available throughout this workshop for technical assistance. Our workshop is going to involve several steps today. So we're going to begin by reviewing the city's vision and mission statements. They are included in the existing strategic plan. That will be our starting point. Then we will look at then we will review the pillars of the existing strategic plan. And you see some of these behind you and also on the wall behind me. These are the 5 goals that we see referenced in our staff reports and which guide the work of the current strategic plan. Then we will walk through a variety of conceptual action items. These are the items that are listed on the wall behind me, and we also have a handout that people can follow. And by the way, we do have all of these materials on this table if anyone would like an extra copy. And then we will review some additional action items. These are conceptual action items that we're packaging together in something we're calling the Draft Safe and Clean Streets Initiative that was referenced during the public comment. So this is going to be interactive. It's almost an exercise program designed as a strategic planning workshop, because we'll be getting out of our seats a little bit later and moving all of the items over here to the wall behind you. And we have on the left column here, higher and lower. So what we're really doing is your work today is going to help us understand the priority, your priorities related to the action items for next year. It doesn't mean that that anything's not a priority. It just, we're trying to identify the degree of priority. And it's okay if most of these items end up above the line. That's okay, and I anticipate most will, because I think a lot of what's on the list are consistent with conversations that I've had with you over the last 3 months. So the first step is to take a look at the vision statement and the mission statement. We'll start with the vision statement, and I'll read it to you, and then my interest is understanding whether this continues to work for us, or alternatively, if you have some suggestions on any adjustments to this. If they're modest adjustments, we can obviously take care of those today. If there's more interest in, for both of these, the vision and the mission statement, if there's more of an interest in potentially rewriting or heavy edits, then it would be my recommendation that we have a couple of members of council work on that and bring it back to you at a later date. And I should also emphasize that the work today that we're doing is a step in the process of updating this plan. We're not going to, there's not an action item to adopt an updated strategic plan today. We're going to receive feedback, talk about these ideas, and then bring a draft strategic plan, a draft 23-24 strategic plan to you at a near-term council meeting. And when we bring that to you, we'll have had the benefit of a couple of nights of sleep after looking at this, thinking about it, and we may want to continue to adjust it. It is a living document, and we'll have an opportunity to adjust it over time. But it may take a couple of meetings before we finally land on the document that we're comfortable with. So we're in no rush, and we look forward to an engaging conversation. So in the vision statement, today it reads, "The City of Hemet shall be a model of excellence in local government, a safe, well-planned community with equal opportunity for all."
Can we really say that that's in Hemet? I mean, is that factual?
This is a vision statement. This is
Oh,
what we
just a
want to
vision.
be.
Well, yeah,
This is
definitely
what
we
we
want
wanna
this to
be.
be, but so far, people that I've spoken with, they're afraid to come out, they're afraid to go shopping, they're afraid to do anything. They go out of town to shop, so we gotta work on that if we're gonna, make this a true statement. And right now, it's not. I mean, we just had a carjacking of an old lady by 2 teenagers in Walmart. She just went shopping. I'll bet you she doesn't go shopping anymore at Walmart.
So
I bet you she orders her food in or has it delivered to her or goes outside the city. So we got to work on that.
So strategic plans generally have a vision statement that reflects what we want to be as a community. So the question is this representative of what we want to be? And if there's anything missing or adjustments that you would like to make, we can receive comments on that today and bring you back an updated version, or have you have a ad hoc, for example, work on bringing back edits to this vision statement. Okay. On the mission statement, this mission statement reads, "The City of Hemet will be a destination of opportunity and empowerment for its residents, businesses, and visitors by capitalizing opportunity, striving for growth, and promoting diversity and respect for each member of our community."
I'm okay with it.
Can we put a start date on that in 2020 something? I'm sorry. Mission statement sounds good.
And just for context, the executive team and I went off site, I think 2.5 months ago, and spent several hours working to develop a mission statement just in different groups and starting with some ideas. And so I know that we can end up spending a lot of time to develop something crisp like this. This is a nice crisp statement. But if we ever wanted to revisit that, we could also bring you examples of what they look like in other communities too. I didn't really anticipate too many adjustments to these two statements, and so thank you for your feedback on that. I'm going to get up in just a minute and I'll speak with a microphone, but our next step is to move into the goals. This strategic plan has 5 different goals, and I'm going to direct you to the existing document starting on page 4. So we have a quality of life element to the strategic plan, and there are 3 sub-objectives that are described here under quality of life. We're referring to this as quality of life and beautification on the wall here. 3 sub-objectives: enhance the visual appearance of the community to make it attractive and reduce blight. Number 2, create and explore homelessness solutions for the City of Hemet. And number 3, increase public safety, visibility, and response. And if you had any comments on that, we're happy to receive those, but our focus has been more on developing updated action items for us for the following fiscal year. Let me just summarize the next 4. So the next is related to economic opportunity. Develop business practices that welcome new development by streamlining processes, and also provide resources to help new businesses to enhance the customer service experience. And we do have some action items related to this on the wall behind me. Number 3, under community engagement, increase transparency for the public, increase the community's pride within the city, deliver messaging to the community that connects, is consistent and relevant. Number 4, under partnering and collaboration, develop concepts and programs to increase opportunities for youth recreation, develop concepts and programs to enhance quality of life services, develop programs to offer support to the community's businesses. And I think you'll see elements of that as well today. And we'll talk about any additional items, ideas that you would like to add. And finally, on organizational effectiveness, operate in a financially sustainable manner, evaluate existing practices to ensure continuity with industry best practices, provide counsel with policies that help provide consistency and lessen liabilities, increase employee retention by training and creating a positive workplace, streamline fire prevention coordination efforts. Okay, I'm going to switch microphones now and jump up here. Now I think you can hear me. Okay. All right. So this wall here has a number of ideas that the staff has developed, and we've put these in the individual buckets that I've just talked about. And these are ideas, many of which we've talked about, some of which we talked about at the budget workshop recently. And these are ideas that some of these are already in motion. For example, the Gibble Park, that's actually under construction, not under design. But these are examples of some items that are already in motion. Others are ideas, but these are ideas that have arrived from the city staff. And so most of those fit that you see on the paper are reflected in the same columns. We've moved a couple just this morning that moved around a little bit. So if you don't see it here, it may show up on a different, in a different location. But we've tried to bucket these, and of course, we have a heavy emphasis on organizational effectiveness when we see this displayed in this way. And I think even under a number of these, like this, a number of these will have additional items that are developed. So once if we set forth to produce an economic development strategic plan, there may be 10 or 20 elements within a document like this that become additional action items. So these sometimes are building blocks for additional work that will be moving forward within the organization. A business concierge program is an example of facilitating development and helping a developer navigate public works, planning that process, and make sure that they receive some hand-holding from the city staff. What we want to do today is make sure that you feel comfortable that this represents the action items that you would like the city to accomplish over the next 12 months. So these are designed as somewhat of 12-month initiatives. Some are going to take a little bit longer. But you'll see some of these we've written on a couple of these today. These are some of the newer ideas that were added. And what I want to do is pause and take some time for the council to look at these. And I think there's a strong possibility that you may have additional ideas that fall into these buckets. One of the questions relates to whether these are the right buckets. So I think most of what we've talked about fit pretty nicely under these buckets. But it's also a threshold question for us: are there any additional? Is there an interest at all in adjusting any of these buckets, or is there an additional bucket that's needed? A good example of that might be communication is something that every city talks about, right? You never can really communicate enough. I see communication partly with community engagement and partly with organizational effectiveness, but it's an example of how we might edit something if we wanted to. So community engagement could be adjusted to include some form of a communication. I think you saw that enhanced with one of the elements, one of the sub-elements that described community engagement and organizational effectiveness. So it's a threshold question, but if you have comments on any of the bucket areas, I'm calling these buckets, but these are basically themes under which we organize the various action items.
I have some comments on community engagement. I would like to see our police, at least for the first 6 months of going into this plan, walking the streets, especially in areas where we have a lot of transients, drug deals, Lyon, Florida, Palm, Florida, State, Stetson, doing a beat on the streets and, just pulling over and getting off and moving people around, doing something that will show a presence that we're not going to tolerate this anymore. Also, I don't see anything.
Mayor, may I
yeah.
interrupt you for just a second? This is a good example of, if I could use this as an example, we have extra sheets of paper here that we're going to distribute to you. This is going to be our first exercise, and pens.
Just take a few.
You can take as many as you want. We're going to give you pens. We're going to pause, and we'd like you, just as the mayor indicated, this is an idea on, can I call it foot patrol? Something like foot patrol. And what we want to do is if you have additional ideas or accomplishments that you would like the organization to complete over the next 12 months, we want to take some time to have you think about those, brainstorm, write them down, put them under the bucket that you think they fit in the most, and then after we're going to take some time to do this, so we're in no hurry. The temperature won't reach 85 degrees for several hours. And if we need to continue to the next day, as I mentioned to you earlier, we can go upstairs tomorrow after the air conditioning's completed. But we're going to take some time to just pause, have you think about, look at these, consider them. If you have clarifications on any of these, and some of them may need a little bit more explanation, we want to have those questions answered. And then we also want to invite you to identify any other ideas. We put them up on the wall, so this is our starting point. And then we get into that exercise program I talked about, where we're going to literally take these items, they lift off because these are large Post-it notes. We can take this off and then re-stick it on the wall, but we're going to move it to this side. And behind you, we have a higher and a lower. So it doesn't mean that, and we have a lot of room for higher, it's okay. But the idea is at some point, the four of you will begin to take these over here and rebuild the plan on this side. But you're going to work together and talk with each other about, does this belong above on the higher side or slightly lower relative to each of these individual tasks? So what that does is it provides us with some clarity, additional clarity on what your priorities are. And I want to re-emphasize the fact that it's okay that most or all of these end up as a high priority, because in this organization, I think we can accomplish the work that's on the wall here. But we want to make sure it reflects your priorities. So I'm going to pause, take several minutes, kind of look for thumbs up that if there's any additional ideas, go ahead and put them up under the buckets. And then when you're ready and feel like you've put the ideas up on the wall, give me the thumbs up, and then we'll continue. And we're available to answer any clarifying questions.
Make sure you guys have the sticky thing up at the top, because I almost wrote it sideways. Put it upside down.
Yes, and it will be helpful, once you put them up there, we'll want you to explain to your fellow council members what your ideas are. So I'll hand you the mobile mic when you do that. I think we have Amazon on standby in case we need more paper, right? We'll be able to drop ship some items real quick. Okay, I've watched each of you provide some new ideas to the list, which is great. Who would like to go first to talk about your items, and then we'll just pass the microphone?
I can see that far. What did I write? Okay, well, the first one, plant more trees, city beautification. There was such an outpouring of support when the city and Rotary and some other groups planted the trees up at Simpson Park. And people want to buy trees and have trees planted in this town, so we need to do that. And we can get good community support on that. The bulk item pickup in local areas. What we do with CR&R is great here at the library, but there are numerous people who don't have access to pickup trucks or trailers or whatever that have stuff and junk. I'm one of them. I have an old barbecue in my backyard. I can't get it in my car to bring it down here, and Joe didn't come by and pick it up.
You didn't let us know that you had it. We would have picked it up if you would have called.
I know you would have. So I think that is something that, and a long time ago when the city had their own trash department, we had bulk pickups on the street that trucks would just go around quarterly or semi-annually, whatever, and pick up the bulk items. Where'd I go with that one? Time frame on new construction and remodels. I believe we have an ordinance that has a time frame on residential construction, and I think we need to have it on commercial. We have a lot of buildings in a state of disrepair, and I think we need to do something so that there's some legal ramification for developers and property owners who leave their buildings looking like trash. And did I have any others? Nope, I think that's it.
Just go down the line, I guess. Here, thank you. Okay, I think I have three. Demographics, okay. I'll wait. Lunch is here. Okay, change of demographics. We need more activities for youth. I see already here we have Initiate Gibble Park soccer field. We need it. We have young families moving in with children, with kids, and we need activities for them if we want to keep them off the street. I'm one of those kids growing up. So if you don't have activities for them, they're going to end up in the streets, and they're going to end up writing on your walls, causing problems, and eventually hurting somebody. So we need more activities for kids. Demographics have changed, and we've kind of gone with the young people now. So that's that. Then I have foot patrols. I think foot patrols would be good in Hemet, just at least for the first 3 months, first 6 months, just to let them know we're out there, to let them know that, hey, you know, if you don't, you know, if you're out there causing problems, you know, we're going to get you, you know, or something. But out of sight, out of mind, that's how people look at it. Hey, no police around here, I can write on the walls, I can break into this building. But if we had foot patrols in hot areas, I think that would help us. And that's just, you know, something that I think would help. Yeah, I've seen this happening at different cities, but they have security that does that. If we want to go security route, that would be fine. But I think this is what we need to bring down our problems with the homeless, and not just the homeless, but people that are out there to cause problems, and there are a lot. See Click Fix with codes, Chapter 53, aggressive solicitation. We have new codes that basically came out in January 11, 2022. See Click Fix is one of the most important tools that I see that we have here for the community. Not everybody knows about it. We got to market it. We got to get it out there. Plus, we got to get these codes out there to let them know what they can't do in Hemet, because there's a lot of stuff here that I didn't realize that they're doing out there. They can't solicit near an ATM. They can't solicit near a driveway coming into a market or a mini mall. There's a lot of things here. So if we get this out to the community, get C-Click Fix on every phone in our community. We have, 85,000 plus people? A quarter to half the people with C-Click Fix can resolve a lot of the issues we have now, especially with this document. And I think I'm done. Thank you.
I wanted to see how much it would be for us to do like a citywide where we power wash all of the sidewalks. We have a lot of sidewalks here that look like me. So if we could figure out like how much it would cost to power wash all the sidewalks, I think that'd be, and then that goes along with beautifying the city. Also with painting, repainting any parts that should have been red, restriping, anything like that. I think some of those things will help with the beautification. And as far as developing relationships with business owners, anytime we have some kind of city civic event or some kind of gathering together, I think it's important that we develop some type of relationship with our business owners, because they're always willing to help out the city. They're always wanting to get involved in things, but a lot of times they don't know how to do it or who to talk to and what they could be a part of. So if we could develop some type of relationship with them so they know if they ever have some business going really good and they want to give back, there's ways that they could do that through the city of Hemet. Also wanted to see if we could create a campaign that talks about how like responsible giving. So instead of giving to someone on the street, you could give to like the community pantry. Some of these places that are struggling to make ends meet, that are doing the work of feeding people, you could give your $2, your $5 to these organizations so that they can thrive. I think that'll help keep their business going so that we don't have more empty buildings around. And then also it educates the community so that we don't keep enabling people to stay on the streets. I think that's it.
Okay, all of these here I think are kind of interrelated. It makes me very sad to see all the trash in town. I'm really tired of all the trash we have. And I firmly believe if you clean up the city, you will get more business, you will get more tax revenue, and everybody's screaming about how bad our streets are and everything. We don't have the money to repair all our streets like we need to. We need good revenue coming into the city. I don't know if there are any littering signs in the city. I haven't seen any that pop out at me. And if we have them, we need to enforce the fines. We need to set examples to all these people that are just lazy and disrespectful to our city. I want to keep the public bus benches free from people camping out on them. It's like, who would want to stop with a cart full of stuff and people laying on the benches? So we need more patrolling, more enforcement of keeping our public bus stops free and for the purpose that they were meant for. There's a lot of trash that's not being kept properly in our city. Part of that is our company that we employ. Part of it is just people, again, being lazy. And buildings. We need code enforcement for all buildings, all businesses, not just those that are new. Like Linda said, we've got some out there that have been there for years and they're sitting with nothing being done with them. We need to do something now with all these unsightly buildings. And I know our public safety is very busy. I was told the city of Riverside has what they call an ombudsman. So what this person basically does is they drive around the city. So they look for the lots that are overgrown. They look for the dumped trash. They look for all kinds of violations that we should be able to keep up with. Like I said, I know the police and fire are very, very busy. And the See-Click Fix helps in some of this. But if we had one person, that was their job. They drive around the city and they report all these violations. That saves the time for everybody else trying to coordinate it. And we have one person that would be responsible for reporting all that. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for the additional ideas. These are very helpful. Do any council members have questions relating to anything that's been introduced or any of the items that you see on the list? We can also dip into the additional items in the Safe and Clean initiative if you had questions about those ideas as well, because most of those are not included here. But I want to make sure everyone has clarity on what each of these items are before we move into our next phase.
What is car wash?
Car wash moratorium.
Yes.
Sal or Monique, how many car washes do we have today?
Oh, I got it.
Currently, we have approximately 15 to 17 car washes in the city operating today. In addition to that, we have 7 car washes that are entitled for development that are either in the building permit stage, and then also an additional 5 to 7 applications in progress. So potentially 26 car washes in the city.
So
Too many.
on your next council,
Too many.
at your next council meeting, I think this is next council meeting? June 13th, I think. June 13th, we have we're planning a 6 p.m. start to talk to you a little bit about the numbers and to explain to you what we're seeing at the staff level and to ask you the question, would you be interested in potentially establishing a moratorium on this? So it's actually already, I was mentioning to the mayor yesterday, when we walk out of the room today, even if these aren't going to, some of these ideas won't necessarily be formally approved until a future council meeting, we can walk away knowing that we'll begin to implement ideas that you talk to us about. We don't have to wait until it's formally blessed when we see that it's a high priority. But this is one where we're actually in motion on that, and we think you may want to consider that particular idea.
What does that mean for those that are already in paperwork process?
That's a great question that we would want to explore.
Real quick, I thought we implemented the drone program already. I thought that was in effect already. Is that
That's
not true?
This was started about 2 months ago before they actually implemented it, so it's on the same list. And when we talked about moving fast yesterday, this is a good example of one where we started some of this work about 2 months ago at the staff level before the police department had actually implemented it. So you're right, Mayor, we could rip that off the wall today.
Okay, good.
We'll
good.
chalk that up to it's done.
One more thing too, on that carjacking at Walmart. I was in the vicinity of State and Stetson. Helicopter was flying. Is it Lieutenant or Captain Ariano? Captain. Anyways, I had my granddaughter with me. We're going to go eat lunch, and if I was alone, I would have stopped and chased somebody. But no, but I can't tell you how proud I was to see him up. He was up on the property level and directing people, move this way, move that way, and telling them where they need to go. And I just seen leadership right there. So I just like to compliment him for working hard and being a leader out there. He did a great job. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Any additional questions that you see or want clarification on?
Yes. On the initiate Gibble Park soccer field design, Gibble Park is not the place for soccer fields. Brubaker Park is. Brubaker Park has acres of undeveloped land down there. And soccer brings a lot of people. There's no parking around there. It's around Gibble. The skate park is great there, and pickleball and that type of stuff. But I think we need to look at that again and have, if we're going to do that, have a location that has parking lots to accommodate the people who go out for soccer.
I would agree with that because of the parking situation, but we need to start something because we lack soccer in this city, and there's a lot of soccer players.
Agreed. But that one needs to have a better location than Gibble.
So maybe, we should consider an edit here that sort of broadens this to consider options for enhancement of soccer.
Yes. You okay with that?
I'm okay with that, as long as we move on it quick, because we lack soccer fields right now, and we have some soccer representatives here that we're looking forward to seeing a soccer field in Gibble Park. But Brubaker would be just as fine, as long as we move on it and we just don't procrastinate and let it sit for years.
And we don't have an active project for Gibble, correct? There's not an active project. So I think one of the, because soccer's fields aren't free, we have to talk about the funding side of it also. So it probably starts with site selection and kind of the vision for how we enhance investment in soccer. So what I'm anticipating is maybe something like a study session where we talk about the what ifs and talk about the trade-offs, talk a little bit about funding and strategies.
And the only reason Gilbo was chosen because it's smack in the middle of the city, and it brings a lot of people, and it's around the restaurants, the hotels, and it would have been ideal to bring in people and to highlight our city, and that's why Gilbo was initially picked.
Okay. So I think we have an edit here that reads, consider options for soccer field design.
That's fine.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we know that really means we're going to come back to you with ideas and options and facilitate a conversation about how do we take a strong step toward enhancing soccer investment.
As long as we move on it quick.
And
And
the
don't
mayor
let it
says we
sit.
need to move on it quick.
Gotta win
Okay.
that lottery.
Any additional questions or clarifications on what we see on the wall?
I'm good.
Can you elaborate more on the business investment incentives?
Right. So we don't have, and this could be something that actually comes out of a economic development strategy. A lot of cities, I went to the realtors came to town on Tuesday this week, and I was one of 5 cities that presented on what we were doing in our city. And I'll tell you, a lot of them had some pretty nice business incentives for attraction to their city, citing of businesses, incentives to bring a business to town. So sometimes there are financial incentives that are developed. Sometimes there's a zone overlay that can be created. I think in one case the city had control of power and or electricity resources, so they could offer some rebates or incentives to the upfront cost to be spread over a longer period of time. There's a lot of different ways that cities structure business incentives, and often there's, sometimes it's just as simple as documenting what's already available at the state level and making sure your plan and your customers know what those are. So we could put together potentially a number of ideas related to how do we attract business startups and business expansion to the city. And so this is a generality right now. We would have to come back to you with specifics at a later date. I see it probably tying into the economic development strategy. Just as a hotel investment program would have a number of characteristics. That's likely to be something that will show up in the economic development strategy, which I think is going to be a good idea for us to put together in the next 6 months, and then push the go button on a lot of these initiatives. Is that helpful, Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm going to pause just another, everyone's thumbs up. Okay. Mayor, would you like to take a break before we move into the heavy exercise portion of our program?
Sure.
Just to stretch a little, then we'll get started on round 2. Okay. We're going to take
Yeah, back at 10, 8
Okay.
minutes.
an 8-minute break. Okay, we're going to get started again. Okay, this is where the strategic planning turns into an exercise program. But before we get started, during the break, we had one additional idea that was added. And Councilmember Krupa, you had an idea that you'd like to introduce.
Yes, like to work towards expanding the library hours and, according to Malcolm, programs. But it is a service to the community, and it is something that we need to do. So we need to find however resources to expand library hours and programs.
So what we've done is I've added that under organizational effectiveness. It probably fits in a lot of different categories or doesn't, but I've added it to the list here.
Very good. Thank you.
So the next step in this is we're going to invite you together as a group to begin to take items from this wall and to organize them on this wall. At one point, I was thinking higher, medium, lower, and we thought it might be easier just to stay higher, lower, and I think this is going to be this is the fun part, really, but it's going to take some time, and it's going to take some discussion between you. So we're available as resources if you have questions for us. But this is really going to be the next step where you talk amongst yourselves and decide where should this land above. And we've put a bit of a line here, so use that as a barometer for something that is a higher priority versus lower. Lower doesn't mean we're not going to get it done. It just means you're distinguishing between something that's a higher priority for the organization versus a lower priority. Do you have any questions about this next step? Okay, ready to go. Everyone's stretched. We're ready to go. Okay, we'll get started. The city treasurer may be available to help with placement of the really high priorities, right? We're looking for the tallest person in the room. Okay, Sal or Monique, we have a question about the wrought iron fencing. Could you come up here and we'll put you on microphone so everyone can hear. Could you comment on the wrought iron fencing?
Okay, so currently, our ordinance, there's a provision in our ordinance that allows for wrought iron security fencing around developments when requested due to a concern by the property owner. However, the unintended consequence of that is that we're seeing a lot of enclosed developments within the commercial corridors, and aesthetically, it doesn't appear attractive. It doesn't provide that scenic landscape. So there's a concern with the proliferation, if you will, of the wrought iron fencing in the city. Right. Because I see a lot of window breaking. I've talked to businesses that have a lot of problems. They put iron or wrought iron in their business on the other side of the fence inside, and they use that for protection because they just can't afford to go in. Well, would like to at least explore other opportunities for security in the city. I've expressed this with other applicants who want to, enclose their developments and really take away from the beauty of the architecture of their buildings and their landscaping and their commercial properties. We believe there's another way that they can secure their development. Now, we can't control, the current circumstances of break-ins, but there may be better strategies for security.
Oh, so you believe there's a better way. Do you have, and can you just elaborate more on that, on what you believe is the better way?
Well, I think that's a citywide community discussion. What we've had as part of new development is that there be security, surveillance, on-site security, but that's a big challenge for the community. But we want to also be consistent with best practices with other communities. And having a beautiful community that's welcome and open is attractive, and it'll bring more development
Right.
into the city. But that security question is a great one,
Yeah.
and I'm very compassionate and concerned.
And I
for
agree
that.
what you're saying, but when businesses can't afford to be replacing windows every week, every other week, and that's what's happening. I mean, I go to LA Fitness, it's like the third time their window got broke, or second or third time, and it takes away from their earnings on what they make, and if they go through their insurance, the insurance goes up, so they're paying more. Yes, sir.
I think this is a good opportunity as we collaborate with community development, with crime prevention through environmental design, which our officers will go out to businesses and explain what we can do. And there's the other options, as you mentioned, that looks desirable at nighttime, where they lock up, they have security inside the business, which helps out. And those are things we discuss, but the beautification of it during the day when people visit, it brings that different welcoming aspect. As well, I don't want to give up too much information as we move later on towards our Clean Streets Initiative. We do have an opportunity to have funding for those businesses that have window breaks, where the city will offer some assistance to include they will provide, or they will be expected to increase their design of their facility or business to make it safer and bring in more customers. So there's an opportunity. I think we're going to talk about it later. I think it's going to be beneficial, but this is a good collaboration that I think community development and the police department can do as we move forward, and we try to bring this to our business community.
Thank you. And while I have you there, when I was in the restroom, I was thinking that a light just popped up, and I was
That's not
thinking when
good.
I was telling you when I was talking about foot patrols, you could have a CSO and a police officer on the foot patrol, so you don't utilize too many of your police officers, or have two CSOs. But a lot of times when they're not police officers, they won't get the respect that a police officer will get while they're on the beat. Just something I thought of. So.
Yeah, and you brought up another thing we're going to bring up later on, our Clean Streets Initiative, that really focuses what you're talking about, but brings in technology too. So good points you're bringing up. I mean, I agree. Police officers is a deterrent, but we'll get into that later. But I think those are great points you're bringing up, and those are things that we need to do. And I think as we combine technology, we're moving forward, still providing that deterrent. So thank you.
Okay, so. Yeah, yes, we already know. Put that on high, Malcolm. This one? What do you think?
Yeah, we need to do that,
Oh.
because it's a
Okay.
discussion that we absolutely need to have.
Okay. Let's start at the top.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, Vanna, would you mind?
Here we go.
So,
I like this.
Yes, because this will bring the people out. This will get them.
okay, so this is like the mural.
I'd like to solve.
That one goes high.
a dribble, yeah, that one comes over here with us.
Okay, we're gonna keep these high. Okay. Great. Yeah, it does, but it's like a grant. Yeah. I'd like to, some of these are already taken. Yeah, exactly, yeah. Flood control is all assignments, but stuff's development.
It's validating, right? Is this a partner?
Wait on this one?
I'm thinking it's the street.
We have engineering street standards that haven't been updated since 2009, and they're due for an update. There's the be based on the current Green Book standards, because they don't all meet current Green Book as of now. It could change. I mean, it's going to change the street design, maybe the thickness of the pavement requirements and things like that. Not necessarily. That's more of a, an administrative task that needs to be done under. No, it's organizational. Yes. It does.
Thank you, sir. Get out of the way.
to stand separately because when we stack them, they get heavy. Council members, I had a question from the mayor about what we have here, which is conduct citywide classification and compensation survey. So typically, I'm sorry? We did it for one bargaining group, I believe. One, two. Safety, does that include police and fire? So we've done 3 bargaining groups, basically. So this would be for the remainder.
Sorry. So we've done safety, we've done police non-sworn, and we are currently doing HMMA. So we need SEIU and non-represented employees.
And it would be fair to say that we would also update the existing work that was done in their last year.
Yes, and then we would need to update the ones that were done because now it's going to be about 2-year-old data. So we need to update all that.
So the advantage of completing the work here, it would cost a little bit of money, or we do it ourselves because we can do it both ways. And what it would do would help us as we move into the labor negotiations next year, because all of the contracts are expiring in June. We have to use the row to the right, yeah. Lots of room here. We're going to bring you some more tape right now. We should probably. We may need the city engineer to help us with affixing this properly so it doesn't fall. And we'll need clarification from you on whether we should set aside budget resources or people resources for the survey work. Okay, I want to pause for a second because we're going to need to let the staff take a deep breath. It's okay. We can get all this done. It's going to be fine. How did that exercise feel to walk through each of these and consider the relative priorities?
Well, if I would have done this, I would have left them over there since they all went in the same location other than our chili cook-off. I would have just took the chili cook-off and moved it down there and left everything as is. But that's just me.
I think it shows that we have a lot of work to do in this city. And it takes all of us. It takes nonprofits, it takes businesses, it takes the general public. We all have to work together to make Hemet better.
And Mayor, to your point about leaving it on that wall, we did think about that, but imagine all the extra steps and the stretching that we were able to do by moving it from.
Well, it brought us closer together.
It did.
So
It brought everyone closer together.
That helped.
Okay, well, I think this deserves a bit of a round of applause for each other, right? Let's celebrate this. Okay, I'm going to switch back to this microphone, and I want to take, we're actually ahead of schedule, so this is a group that works very fast together. I appreciate that. We're at 10:30, so we have a lot of time. This handout here is a draft of a safe and clean streets initiative, and I wanted to take some time to walk through this with you. And I want to specifically put our police chief, our fire chief, our public works director on notice that we may be answering some questions on this. Maybe we can provide some additional microphones to you. So we're going to pause because we're going to start with safe, and our police chief is going to comment on some of these. Chief Poost, I'm going to put you on standby here to help us with some of these safe strategies. I'm going to back up a little bit, though, because from the day I arrived, every conversation I've had with the city council and members of the community has been about how can we make Hemet safer, and how can we clean and or beautify the community. And so some of this begins internally in making sure that we understand our current service levels, how frequently are our streets being swept, who's responsible for picking up carts along the right-of-way on Florida, Caltrans, how often is Caltrans picking these carts up, who's on the other end of See-Click Fix? Is it Public Works? Is it Code? Is it the fire department? So there's a lot of logistical alignment that needs to take place within the organization. So over the last 3 months, we've asked a lot of those questions, and we've talked internally about how we enhance the communication between our departments. And we've learned a lot more about the levels of service in and around our commercial corridors in particular. And through those conversations and learning, we developed a number of ideas that we sat down and shared with the mayor and the mayor pro tem to receive some feedback on. They were adjusted a little bit based on that conversation. And today I wanted to take a moment to walk through these with you so that we receive some feedback on these. This is a concept, so if we feel comfortable with the initiative, the various strategies that are identified in the initiative, this would be complementary to the work plan that we have here. In some cases, what's on the wall behind you is replicated on this plan. So we are documenting the investments that you're making in next year's budget, planning to make in next year's budget, and including those on this initiative. We imagine a big splash so that we share with the community exactly what's on the list. We talk about it, that we bring this initiative and the progress on it and the work plan, the action items that you've identified here, back to the city council in public every quarter for an update on progress so that we can all track the progress. It will also be updated online, but in a public meeting, bring all of this back to you for progress reports. So on our Safe and Clean Streets initiative, we have 10 specific strategies on safe. And Chief, if you could move through each of these and provide a briefing, an overview of each of these elements so that the council has clarification. And council, if you have any questions, feel free to ask those.
All right, before we get started, there is a mistake. We forgot to add keeping the police happy. Today is National Donut Day, and no one brought donuts. I mentioned that to a couple council members, so. But anyways, all kidding aside. So the first one is deploy enhanced technology cameras for the crime suppression. Now that's a vision that we have, myself and the command staff, to bring on a real-time crime center. And we're going to deploy these. We're actually in discussions right now to deploy 8 cameras throughout the city and major intersections, so we could have a crime center where somebody actually sits there and can utilize those cameras to check the certain areas. We combine that with our crime analysts to get these heat maps similar to what the mayor was mentioning, to know when the crime's about to occur, and then we deploy our resources there because it's a deterrent for us to be there. We don't wait till the crime occurs. We deploy those resources prior to. So in a combination of all that together, that's deploying enhanced technology cameras for crime suppression. Number 2 is expand patrol staffing by 8 officers to enhance data-driven patrols on commercial corridors. Now that's exactly what I explained. Using those officers and our technology with cameras and our drone program, we're able to deploy resources with including our heat maps that are developed by our crime analyst for those resources out into the public in areas to prevent crime. Number 3, expand community behavioral assessment team, our CBAT team. It's our crisis intervention team to 7 days a week. I'm a big proponent to get all our resources deployed 7 days a week. That's always been a priority of mine. I think throughout our careers, we've always worked every day of the week, so those special teams that we have should be deployed 7 days a week. Right now, we currently have 1 officer with a mental health clinician that works during the week. We need to increase that and make sure that they're out there 7 days a week to assist those in need of help. And that's directly related to our homeless and those that are dealing with mental health issues. And I could tell you right now that since we implemented this program several years ago, we've seen a great reduction in calls for service for 5150, which is mental health crisis. Number 4 is add 30% more flock cameras as a resource multiplier. We were the first city in Riverside County to deploy these resources. It's been very beneficial. As explanation that the mayor mentioned about the carjacking, we were able to locate that vehicle within minutes, the direction of travel, and locate those suspects due to these cameras. So we're going to increase that to another 20 cameras. So it'll be a total of 60 cameras throughout our city. Utilize our drone as a first responder program as a crime deterrent. We have been testing and evaluating the drone program for 2 months. We had extra funding, so we continued that, which ended in May. So we're continuing that through the end of June. But in hopes of the budget passing, going through, we want to implement it as one of our programs that we have here at Hemet PD. Establish a city prosecutor pilot program to prosecute infractions and misdemeanors not prosecuted by the district attorney's office. This is going to be in collaboration with our city attorney, and developing this will hold people accountable on certain crimes that are committed within the city. Next, we'll distribute a Section 602 trespass letters to all commercial businesses on our main corridors within 45 days. A big thing is communication and collaboration. This is going to allow us to go out there and meet with every business and provide them information on trespass letters that allows us to make those arrests when they're not present. So this is something that is way overdue and something that we need to move forward to enhancing the safety of our community and our citizens when they're shopping in Hemet. Expand Business Watch program and improve business engagements with crime prevention through environmental design, or CEPTED. This is bringing in a crime analyst, provide info on high crime areas and heat maps, and involving our officers on our Restoring Our Community Strategy team who handles those nuisances or issues in some areas and business areas. They provide crime prevention through environmental design, discussing, and this is free to our businesses, going out there discussing what changes they can make to prevent any crime. Establishing monthly community police engagement focus group. This has been a goal of mine for a couple years, and I think we're to the point where we need to push this out, and this is bringing a diverse group of people throughout the city to give recommendations. What can we do better, and for myself and my command staff and our officers, our department, to get a better understanding how we could provide better service and delivery. Number 10 is support and or sponsor state legislation and ballot measures that impose stricter penalties and accountability for criminal actions. We've always taken a back seat on this, and I think It's time that we take a proactive role. I see that we have in the recent past, and that's in different unions. The PORAC, which is a police officers union, as well as the Chiefs of Riverside County, our RCOPS association. We've taken a more proactive stance in putting that information out there. But I think as a city as a whole, we really need to take a proactive stance. What affects us in this city? And go to our legislature to explain that. Hey, we're a significant city. We have different obstacles than other cities deal with. We don't have a freeway system. We have our stretch. Our freeway is Florida Avenue, which with every business on that district, we deal with different issues. And we have to have a louder voice out there. So those are our 10 safe initiatives. If you have any questions.
The Neighborhood Watch program, and is that active, or do you have plans to reactivate it? Because I know it was extremely beneficial a few years ago when Rosalie was running the program.
Yeah, we still have that with our volunteers, but I don't think it's as active as we should be, and that should be a step that we take as well. And that business crime prevention program is actually based off of that because it is a successful program.
Yeah.
But we do provide information when we're called upon by any community groups to go out there to talk about neighborhood watch programs and things like that.
A couple years ago, or a few years ago, whatever, I think it was through the Neighborhood Watch program, and we would have an evening with a cop in different neighborhoods. And I mean, the neighborhood would get together, would have a couple police officers, have other volunteers there, and it was getting to know the officer on that beat, so to speak, but also just general information and getting neighbors to know their neighbors. So I think anything like that, reactivating that, getting that with the, collaboration and community outreach is extremely beneficial.
Yeah, I remember those days. It was barbecues, and we'd go out there and just don't make the mistake like today. Make sure you bring donuts.
Got a question on number 6. Now, on this program, who would be the one overseeing this? If people came in front of a judge, who would that judge be? How hard is it to implement this, and how long will it take?
That is a great question because when we initially started this discussion, I was unfamiliar with this. I've heard of it, and I started doing my research, and it would be in collaboration with our city attorney's office, would provide that prosecutor, and we'd have a designated date, and I'm sure that Stephen will clarify anything that I missed, but that would be part of the process that they're actually seeing with a prosecutor on behalf of the city to handle those cases prior to going to the district attorney's office. And I know that Mike Hester, our district attorney, will be very supportive of this program because we're taking initiative. And this would be another program that the city starts that no other city in Riverside County, I don't think at this time has, unless I'm incorrect.
And us being a general law city, that's not going to conflict with anything on the rules of how we have to govern our city?
I don't believe so, but I'm sure Stephen's going to provide further information on this.
Okay.
Thanks, Chief. So we're looking at a couple of different strategies. So right now, as state law exists, the city has the authority to prosecute as misdemeanors or infractions violations of the city's municipal code. So, Mayor, you were talking about the aggressive solicitation ordinance that the City Council passed early last year. The City Attorney's Office already has the ability to bring prosecutions in state criminal court, so in front of the regular judges that hear all other criminal cases. We have not implemented that program yet, but we have that ability, and that'll be something that we would work with the police department for them to begin issuing citations. Rather than forwarding them to the DA's office, they would forward them to our office would file them, our office would prosecute them. It's actually what I did at the first 2 years of my career, was prosecute municipal code violations. And we have several attorneys in our office who are willing, able, and ready to take that on.
Can I stop you there?
Sure.
I guess this will go to the chief. You use the key word, we haven't implemented this yet. Why haven't we implemented what he's talking about yet? I mean, without having
That's a
this-
great question. I think I could answer this way. The laws have changed in California. There's no longer accountability. In fact, the DA is now doing a pretrial diversion program because when certain cases that we file go to the judge, they're dismissing it. So this is a frustration from the police department, through the DA's office, through the courts, through legislation, through our community, because there's no accountability for individuals. We didn't have to do this in the past, but now, and it shows you that the DA is doing something like a pretrial diversionary program, that we're doing something different because it is not working. And we need to take different steps, be creative, and this will be a good pilot program to see what's the benefits, how is it working? We'll be able to track that and see the benefits that come out of this program.
And
Thank
Mayor,
you.
I had some additional comments.
I'm sorry?
I had some additional comments to add for it. So, one of the things when we talk about implementing was we didn't begin doing the actual prosecutions of the ordinance. However, I do think having the ordinance on the books did give the police department some useful tools in getting people to move along, I guess the threat of prosecution. But now it's time to follow through, right? The second part of this, and one of the things that we'll be exploring with the police department, the city manager's office, is working with the district attorney's office on a neighborhood prosecutor agreement with the city. So that is something different. That is something that some other cities have explored. It would require the cooperation of the district attorney's office. And what that is that would allow the city attorney prosecutor to not just prosecute violations of the municipal code, but to prosecute misdemeanor violations of state law, things that are ordinarily prosecuted by the district attorney's office only. Generally speaking, a low priority for that office. They're busy prosecuting felonies, serious felonies, and when you're looking at those lower level misdemeanors, they're usually not their highest priority. A concern of the district attorney's office is usually going to be making sure that competent, qualified people are going to be doing that work. In this case, the people from my office that I have in mind for this either were deputy district attorneys in the DA's office for Riverside County, so they were your employees prosecuting. I sure hope they're qualified to do it. Or they're prosecuting attorneys that have come from other agencies to work for our office. So that would be the sort of newer program. I think that we can bring a lot to the table that would encourage the DA's office to collaborate with us. And I think that would be sort of a new program that would be breaking new ground in this area. It would also allow, the chief was talking about diversion programs. One of the things that we've also wanted to work with the DA's office on is diversion programs can be very good, especially if you're talking about first-time offenders, nonviolent offenders, doing 24 hours in county, or coming back to Hemet and doing some community service and giving back to the community that you perhaps have harmed with your behavior, right? If we were able to collaborate on a neighborhood prosecutor program, that would give us a lot more control to run a Hemet-centric diversion program that would be a way for some of these lower level offenders and first-time offenders to give back to our community. I've had some good conversations with the city attorney's office in Long Beach, which broke some new ground in that particular area. And I think there's a couple other city attorney's offices throughout the state that could really teach us a thing or two in that area.
Okay. Thank you, sir. And to you, city manager, out of all these high-level ones, can we make that a high-level one? Prioritize that?
We're considering everything under the the Safe and Clean Streets Initiative as something that would be a high priority.
Okay, thank you. And what about the 5150s that you end up with? How are they going to get on a diversion program if they're kind of way out there? What would happen to them if, say, for instance, you put them on a program where they got to clean the streets, they don't make it, you find them again, you do the same thing, send them back to court, or how does that work?
So that's going to be trial and error on that part. I mean, every situation and incident is different. Obviously, someone that's going to commit numerous crimes and stuff, we'll work closely with it's going to more likely be a DA matter because we'll reach out to them. This is somebody that continues to commit these low-level crimes. And that's how we collaborate with the DA currently today is we have someone that commits crime after crime after crime. After the judge dismisses the first 4 or 5, we can't deal with this individual unless they hold them accountable. So those things like that where it's going to be a continuous issue and they don't follow through, we'll file those types of cases with the DA's office.
Any additional questions on the SAFE strategies? We did have a few new visitors to the meeting today. We do have copies of all the documents up front. If anyone would like a copy, we can, if you raise your hand, we'll bring you one. Now we're going to transition to the clean strategies. And let me back up again by indicating that the 21 various strategies that we've identified in the Safe and Clean Streets Initiative, these are intended to set the table for investment in the community. So these are all strategies designed to position the city for additional investment, whether it's residential investment or commercial investment. And of course, we're going to direct everyone that comes to town to the Hemet Auto Mall, right? Like them to go shopping. So there are 11 clean initiatives, clean strategies, and I'm going to walk through those with you. The first was inspired partly by my own questions and observations driving to work for a few days. But we've learned that the levels of service in terms of picking up carts and debris and street sweeping are different. So carts, for example, Caltrans is essentially responsible for that. The service level is approximately every week or two. That's not fast enough. And in the conversation that the staff had back in April, we collectively came together with the idea that some form of a enhance, we started to call it a surge, and I want to credit Deputy Chief Webb from our fire department with that phrase because I think I heard it from him first. But I really liked the idea of, and it's similar to if my backyard didn't look very nice and I needed to polish it up, the first step in that is to do some heavy work, and then the maintenance gets a little easier, right? Maintaining what's already been enhanced is a little easier. But rather than sort of the current level of services, we try to pick up as we can. But this change throughout this initiative is a proactive upfront investment in enhancing the levels of service. So our recommendation is that we initiate proactive 7-day-a-week patrols on all of our commercial corridors, beginning with Florida. That includes looking for graffiti, addressing shopping carts, debris. I notice a lot of debris around some of the benches. I see debris in some of our gutters. The level of service, we'll come back to that because I think we have another element here related to street sweeping, but the street sweeping occurs every other week. I think in most cities that I've worked for, the downtown commercial core, it's often not as large as Hemet's, right? We have a large commercial corridor down Florida, but typically the commercial corridors are experience street sweeping every week. And the level of service that we have built into the CR&R contract is every other week. It's actually twice a month. They are providing it every other week. So they're doing it 26 times a year. They're required to do it 24 times a year. But the idea here is to, through use of part-time staff, through some enhancements, through partnerships, begin to tackle the streets every morning, 7 days a week, and sustain that through the entire year with the opportunity to reassess how things are going at the end, learn through the process on whether the efforts we've made start to suppress some of the activities that we've seen out there. And our hope is that it gets a little easier longer term and a little bit less expensive. So that's the concept here. Feel free to interrupt me if you have questions.
On that note, this goes to the fire chief. A couple meetings ago, we approved a truck to be retrofitted, I guess, into a flatbed, Does this serve the purpose for shopping carts also and removal of the shopping carts?
Yes, sir. Well, it's currently, actually, it was just dropped off in San Diego County the other day to be retrofitted. And you're referring to the stake bed vehicle that's going to be utilized for that. So I could tell you that already our Department of Life Safety staff, between our fire prevention officers and our code enforcement officers, they are already actively picking up shopping carts when they see them and returning them to Target or some of these other bigger box stores that we have in town. And then once we have that added capacity, then certainly we're going to be able to do more of that.
Question on that: when you return them to the stores, do they pay you for returning them? Because I spoke with a person that used to do that for the local shopping marts like Walmart and Target, and he got paid for every basket he returned. Shouldn't we take advantage of that if we're returning them also?
Great question, and I know that we are actively pursuing something like that in terms of a cost recovery. And I'll actually ask our code enforcement manager, Lionel Martinez, to elaborate. Thank you.
I'm Lionel Martinez. I oversee the code enforcement unit. I'm Lionel Martinez. I oversee the code enforcement unit. We do right now. We're picking them up. There used to be a program that we had where we would take them to the yard. They'll store them there. And what it ended up happening is we just had way too many carts. By the time the stores came by and picked them up, they allowed us to pick them up. Then they would they would just pick them up from the yard, then charge the stores themselves. So we were doing the heavy work for them. So now what the yard has decided is just throw them away because it's cheaper for the big stores like Stater Brothers, Target, and them. If we bring shopping carts back to them to the store, they have to wipe them down, fix them, clean them up to be in use for their customers. It's easier for them just to throw them away and just claim it on their insurance. And so that's what we're running into now. We're running into is that we take them back to the store, they don't want them, so we just dump them at the city yard into one of the trash bays.
How many do you average? How many shopping carts, say, for a month?
Last Tuesday, 2 of the officers removed like 53 shopping carts. That means they fill up their trucks.
There's no way we can get them, repaint them, and sell them to smaller stores?
That would be a good idea. So code enforcement's averaging about from 100 to 110 a week. So that we work 2 days, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we have 2 officers that are picking them up.
Malcolm mentioned scrap metal.
Yeah, we could do the scrap metal. We do leave them at the yard. Where they have certain bays for trash metal, so we try to stick them in the middle. So CNR can pick them up and demolish them there. But we also have the plastic ones we have to be careful with. So those are some of the things that code enforcement is doing right now. So we're averaging, like I said, in a month we're about 100 to 120. So as officers are going through doing their inspections, the first thing they do is travel down Florida. And that's their first 2 hours of the day.
Once we implement the number 6 prosecuting thing, we can probably save these carts and let the people that end up having to do work furloughs or whatever they do, fix them, paint them, and sell them, or either set them up for scrap metal so somebody's making the money instead of CR&R.
So these homeless are removing the lock wheels, the mechanism that locks them. And they replace them with other wheels, and so they're able just to move them around. I've seen them that they're modified on bikes. Sometimes they have them 2 stacked high, and so we're trying to just remove all this off our streets.
There's a lot of creativity in our community, Mayor.
Yes, there is, and that's why I'm thinking the homeless could probably fix them nice and make them usable again, and city can make money off it.
So just so you know, this was one of the things that the city manager asked our office to prepare some proposed revisions on, which was the shopping cart ordinance. As it stands right now, the city does have the ability to levy $50 fines against the stores. Generally speaking, this is one of those circumstances where, I think it requires the exercise of what I would call prosecutorial discretion. Oftentimes our businesses will claim that they're the victims of the crime. Their property was stolen, and then they kind of turn it around back when they're discussing with the city. And so one of the things that we're really working on is, okay, how do we get them to implement, we call them like a shopping cart containment plan, something like that, where we get, especially our larger stores that have a lot of the carts that we're seeing, how do we get them to implement a policy at their end to stop the removal in the first place, right? Because you're right, there's sort of a difficulty in what do we do with these carts once we've gathered them up. Gathering them up is certainly a better solution than leaving them lying about, but the best solution would be if they never left the property in the first place. And so that was the task that the city manager gave us, and I think it's a really creative way towards getting at the root of the problem. And that's what we're trying to come up with, is how do we incentivize that action on the front end, and then how do we penalize the failure to implement those kind of programs. And as the code enforcement manager mentioned, we have a lot of creativity in our community. Those electronic wheel stops, they can be removed if you really want to remove them. So that's not the only solution. We're going to have to keep looking for other ways to deal with this.
So as the city attorney mentioned, some of the ideas that we're going to talk to you about today, we anticipate recommending to you changes in the municipal code. The city attorney just talked about one of those. The next item on the list is another that has, it drives a need to amend the municipal code. So the second strategy is to establish a trash enclosure pilot program. And as I've looked at town and talked with businesses and others, it's obvious to me that some efforts in this front, investments on this front, will yield some significant return. So what we know is that homeless are sometimes living in some of these enclosures that are not locked, that do not have roofs. We know that these bins that are in these enclosures or around these enclosures are attractive for scavenging. We know they're attractive for illegal dumping. All of this activity is happening when they're not locked up. They're also prone to graffiti, and essentially they're unsightly. Many of these bins and enclosures, the enclosures in particular, were built pre-1990 when the state changed the rules with respect to recycling. So today, more than one bin is needed at commercial businesses, one for recycling, one for trash. We also have other bins sometimes for restaurants. In short, the enclosures are not large enough. But if someone walked into the city today, our code, we wouldn't necessarily be able to accommodate a change to their parking configuration. So this is a good example of how, if we create some flexibility for the staff to be able to use a parking space or two to expand an existing enclosure, this will be an opportunity. And with this pilot program, we're recommending that the investments only be allowed if the enclosure includes a roof and a locking structure, so that no one can get into the enclosure. And we have some really nice examples of this in different locations throughout town. Newer facilities that are just beautiful, they're elegant, no one can get in, they're not prone to graffiti, etc. I reached out to CR&R and asked if they would be willing to contribute to a program like this. They said they would. I talked to them about conceptually a $250,000 program, and they had offered about 10% of that, $24,000. I asked them if the city would expand their investment, would they expand their investment as well? The answer was yes. In conversations with our ad hoc committee, the recommendation was made to grow that from 250 to 500. So a partnership of the city and CR&R to support. This is actually probably the opportunity to do 20 trash enclosures, maybe a little more, depending on the extent of the investment. But I'm convinced that it will have a material, and it's going to start incrementally, but over time it will have a material change on downtown and the commercial corridor, because it's going to deter people that otherwise would look for food, otherwise dump trash, otherwise graffiti up some of the bins. Any questions about the trash enclosure
Yes,
pilot?
you said if we doubled it, are they going to double from 24 to 48?
They would go to 50.
50, okay.
Right. And maybe with a phone call from you, Mayor, they'll go to 100. I'd love to press them even more.
How can we stop the graffiti on them?
So when
seems
they're
almost impossible.
When they're locked up, they won't be accessible. And we have, when I did do a ride along with 3 of their executives, and we drove through town and looked at a lot of locations. What we found and talked about, sorry about that, is that a number of the bins were missing wheels. They had a lot of graffiti, and I also looked at the language in our contract with CR&R to understand exactly what the language compels them to do. And the language is a little more general than I would like. It's not as specific. It doesn't say, for example, like we have in our conditional use permits, we expect graffiti to be cleaned up within 48 hours. That's not in the CR&R contract, but it has a general statement that says we expect them to be clean. I interpret that as within 48 hours. If it's what we expect of all of our other businesses, we should expect it of CR&R as well. And I've shared that level of expectation with them.
Why don't we start a mural program where we can have citizens who are artists come in and paint a mural. A lot of times they won't overwrite on a mural, especially if it's something they like. So.
Yes, and in fact, under the Arts and Public Places program, something that was inspired by a comment Malcolm made, we could do just that. And I saw some really nice murals yesterday in a presentation from our neighbors in San Jacinto. They have some tremendous murals, and I know that we will also be able to do something like that. So the trash enclosure program, the vision here is that we make it so easy for the property owner that we'll even waive the fees to accommodate this. We may even I know we'll have some, in partnership with community development, we will put together some designs that will be off the shelf essentially. You can pick A, B, or C, whichever fits for your property. There's a small strip mall with a liquor store at Lyon in Florida. It's the northeast corner. That's a perfect example of how this program will work. So that if I'm picking the top 10 locations in town, that's probably at the top of my list. But that only really requires taking an extra parking spot or two, moving one wall, and then building up the enclosure on top. And that bin would be locked at night, so there's less opportunity to apply the graffiti, right? It's only going to be unlocked on the day it's picked up, and then it should be locked up again. And then it's going to be our responsibility from a code enforcement perspective to hold them accountable for locking their bins and maintaining a cleanly premises. So that's the way the program will work. I'm convinced that it will change the appearance of town and deter homeless behavior and activities.
Okay, so I don't understand how that's going to stop the graffiti, though. You've got an enclosure and you've got something around it. What's to keep them from doing graffiti on the outer enclosure?
They can do graffiti on the outer enclosure, but and we will have to clean, property owners will have to clean that up as they do today. However, the bins themselves are subject to graffiti today. We have replaced a lot of those, and I've kept an eye on the ones that have been replaced. Most to date have not received new graffiti. There are a few exceptions to that, but the bins themselves, when they're out of the enclosure, are encountering graffiti, and so when they're inside, we'll keep them clean. I think it'll be cleaner.
It's basically made to keep them from having access to all the trash and throwing it out when they're looking for bottles and cans. So.
Okay, the next strategy here is an annual I'm calling this an annual community service day, but this is really where the community comes together. And there are a number of pre-programmed activities that we can then deploy our community to, whether it's red curb painting, fire hydrant painting, cleaning up a person's private property, repainting a fence, landscaping improvements, you name it, weeding, everything. And so there's a city that I know about that's on their 10th year of doing this. And they have some business sponsorship. They partner with community groups, service clubs, schools, every organization we can find to bring together. And their vision and our vision really should be not hundreds of volunteers, but more than 1,000 volunteers deployed together on a single day where maybe the mayor provides a large pep talk at the beginning of the day. We deploy out to our locations and we come back and celebrate 4 hours later or something like this. So our vision is a late fall or an early spring type of event. This other city that we would model the program after is already calling for events months in advance of their planned activities. And so it will take us a little bit of time to get this up and running in a quality way. And I know we will learn from our own experience and get better over time. But I think our vision should be bringing more than 1,000 people to help with beautification rather than, and it will be cleanup debris as well, but bringing more than 1,000 people to help clean up the community.
And we can incorporate this into what we already have, our city cleanup quarterly or semi-annually, whatever we
This
have.
would be over and above all of that.
But we can incorporate it into that.
It's sort of a different type of.
Okay, I've talked to the city manager about this. I lived in San Diego for like 22 years, and we had a wonderful event like this in National City. That's a little poorer economy than San Diego. They had volunteers from all sectors that would go down, and it was mostly for disabled and elderly. And it was actually a 2-day event. It was one weekend, and it was called Christmas in July. It's cooler down there. You can do it in July. Here you'd have to do it, as he said, you know, in the spring or fall. I'd like to see it a whole day. You know, we did it for 2 days. And we had corporate sponsors like Home Depot and Lowe's would give us all the tools for it. We had contractors come in and do some work even beforehand because it got so big and it grew so much. And I am like really pushing for this program. I think it would be great for our city to get everybody involved, like I said before, nonprofits, just, you know, businesses, everybody. And I really like this, so I will be on board.
We just found the chair of our committee, Mayor.
Thank you for volunteering, Jackie.
Okay, one of the next item is to improve community awareness and use of C-Click-Fix. When the mayor and council member Peterson joined staff at the Four Seasons. I'm going to pause for just a second. We're leaving the door open for a little breeze to until this air conditioning is fixed later today. The mayor shared with everyone shared the fact that C-Click-Fix is an application that's available on your phone that really helps us pull together the community to help us identify areas that need attention. And so as we've talked to people in the community, I think we've come away learning that they don't necessarily know about the application. They don't know how to use it. They don't know it's available. It's our job on the other end to make sure that we're quick to react to those. And the idea here is that we would address or resolve issues within 24 hours. We'll measure our performance on this, but clearly there's an opportunity to share more about this, and we want to do everything we can to promote C-Click-Fix because it's going to complement us on a cleaner community.
So I'm sure there's a reporting feature on this, and I think I've seen one when it first came out, but I think we should get a monthly report on what the statuses are and how long it takes for them to fix something or resolve an issue, and that to make sure that we're getting it done in a timely manner, because I get some complaints from people that, you know, after a week or two that the problem's still there. So we need to work on this, and I think the reporting feature is really important.
Thank you for that feedback, Mayor. I think that's exactly why when I first started reporting carts, because I started to use it when I arrived, and I would see a cart out there and I would follow it online, and I realized it was still there. And I learned that Caltrans had a role in the carts because of the corridor that they're responsible for. But it led to a realization that the service level is just not enough. And they're not going to be an organization that will come out daily in the morning to clean up carts. So it really becomes our opportunity or need to enhance the service level there. But you're right, I think, and we'll learn from the data on where we need to invest more time or energy or resources to make sure that the turnaround on addressing the issues is responsive and quick. And as more people begin to use it, it's going to be even more challenging on the staff side. So we're going to need to monitor that. Okay. Number 5 is expand the city's Adopt a Street program by 100% in 6 months. So today, we have 8 streets that are sponsored. Each segment is 1 mile in length. And so the good news is we have 8 miles with volunteers that are sponsored. The bad news is we have over 250 miles. So we have a lot of upside on this opportunity. And I think as we partner with the community on a community service day and other initiatives, we'll have an opportunity to identify other volunteers and persuade them that this is something that will enhance the community. Okay, if we turn to page 5, number 6 at the top, this is a concept. It's something that a lot of cities have. I did some additional research on this in other communities, and I can tell you that this is a pretty active type of program in other communities, particularly communities that want to see a change, right, and a transition. So the concept here is also to make this by district in some form or fashion. We may need to start initially as a comprehensive city program, but we kind of have a vision that each of the council districts should perhaps have an opportunity to recognize changes and improvements in your own districts. So we like the fact that there might be a little competition, healthy competition among the council districts. But the idea here is to have a council district, both commercial and residential beautification contest. So categories for this might look like, and really this is to recognize most improved properties. So example categories could be best residential appearance, most improved residential, best commercial appearance, most improved commercial, best water-wise landscaping, otherwise known as xeriscaping, best new commercial project. These are just examples. We would need to build the program, build the criteria, bring it to you for a blessing. You know, we move it forward, you approve it, and then we go. It will take a little time to get up and running, but our vision is that it becomes the staff has a vision that it could go as quickly as quarterly. I think we may need to start a little slower. So maybe we won't deploy it every quarter, but maybe we'll start once and then decide if it needs to come back in a full year or whether we can come back in 6 months and do it again. But maybe we work toward a pace of quarterly down the road. So that's the concept.
Real quick question. Most districts have multiple HOAs. Would this break down to HOAs or would it just be district?
Our vision was district, but this is something that as we put together the program, we can refine it with your feedback. So when we bring a draft program to you, we can talk specifically about whether it could or should be refined even further with respect to HOAs. Okay. Number 7 is to create an art in public places program. I think San Jacinto's had a program for about 2 or 3 years now. We're starting to see some of the impacts of that program. Often programs like this attach a small fee to a development project, both on the residential and the commercial side. So a small contribution goes into a fund that then is made available to artists. We can also condition development to either build or provide a payment in lieu of art. We know that we have a rich history of art in our community, and and art is an economic driver in many ways. I know there are cities that I had a neighbor city in a prior city I worked in. Our neighbor had this program in place for probably about 10 years, and they developed a brochure and started to capitalize on the art that was in a walkable downtown. And they had a brochure that talked about each of the art installations, and they began, I think they had so much art, they began to rotate some of the installations. And so this is going to, and some of the programs I've looked at, they date back to the 90s in different cities or earlier. These are programs that after 10 or 20 years, you can really see the impact of a program like this. So this is the vision. It can consist of art pieces on commercial property throughout town. It can be murals. It can be some of these electrical boxes that we've talked about. So there's a lot of opportunity here. I think I had a long conversation with Mayor Pro Tem about this program, and we talked about potentially a wall at Mary Henley Park, where a wall could be built, or was it existing, Mayor Pro Tem?
On the bathroom enclosure.
So the back of it, we could either add a canvas, so it's not the wall, but maybe there's a canvas that is placed on the back of that wall, and art could be applied. It stays quarterly, it rotates. The art piece could then be moved somewhere else. So rather than perhaps graffiti that's occurring on nearby aqueduct channels, the artists could be encouraged to come to the park instead as an alternative. So I think we have a lot of flexibility. We expect the art community to bring some creative ideas to bear, and that would be the concept here. Okay, number 8, and I heard a little bit about this in our earlier discussion, expand proactive code enforcement efforts on commercial corridors. So today, and I think, and I've mentioned it, I think to at least one council member, it's probably helpful for us to bring, and I've talked to our fire chief about this too, it's probably helpful for us to bring forward an informational item to you at a future council meeting relatively soon that just shares with you the process that we go through for code enforcement cases. Often it takes several warnings or several notices before we achieve compliance. And it's also helpful to understand the volume of cases that we already have that we have to follow through on. I think that will help us all have some context on how many items are out there. But the initiative here is to enhance the proactive code enforcement activities. So we're not just looking at see, click, fix and following through. We're actively patrolling, looking for areas that we need to attend to, and the idea is to deploy additional patrols. Now, it's not going. The concept here that we have developed wasn't. It was a 5-day-a-week effort. There is room for expanding that. If we were to expand it, we would consider probable use of some part-time staff on top of that, or volunteers. And I think the mayor and I talked about some ideas recently as well.
Yeah, I'd like to be a weekend volunteer if I could. Bring me up to speed in the code enforcement, and I'd love to help the chief out and get things, taken care of. And we've discussed this before, so I'm not going to bring anything up because it's already been discussed. But yes, I would like to be a volunteer and maybe help out some way.
Any questions or feedback on the code enforcement front?
I definitely think it needs to be on weekends also.
And I think that's when a city doesn't have code enforcement 7 days a week, there are gaps that others, that may be doing construction or other activities that we would otherwise prohibit. Sometimes it does show up on weekends. So if the council direction is for us to work on bringing you some feedback and making sure that the budget reflects an investment for weekend work as well, we're happy to do that.
I make way too much for being a city council member, so you don't have to pay me. I'll volunteer for nothing. That was a joke, everyone laughed.
Okay, number 9 is to consider adjusting street sweeping service levels in commercial corridors. This can be done in a variety of ways. So one option would be to talk with CR&R and receive a proposal from them. We can look at potentially contracting out for some supplemental street sweeping services from a nearby available alternative if they're more cost effective than a CR&R option. We can look internally at other options where we might want to consider, we could consider purchasing some equipment and designating a staff person to provide that type of service. So I think what we need to do is do a little research on this if you are interested in considering options for moving from every other week sweeping to weekly type of street sweeping.
He's looking at me. I'm hoping that our city's going to get on the ball and quit littering and, you know, obliterating our streets the way they are now. So hopefully we won't need it.
But I know we need it now, and once we start, maybe fining people for littering, and after it calms down in a decade or two.
We hope it'll be faster, right? What we'll do is we'll bring you back some options at a later date. So it inevitably it costs money to deploy additional sweeping. We need to understand what the cost would be. And we'll have to talk to you about what that looks like. I mean, it may need, maybe one of the options is we can't do it an additional 2 times per month, but maybe 3 out of 4 weeks we sweep, right? We'll just have to understand what the cost would be, what are some alternatives, and decide at a later date whether we can afford to implement that type of an enhancement. Okay. Number 10 is to develop and launch a 2-year, this can change, so this is a concept, but a facade and property improvement pilot program. So this is and we've talked to you about this in the budget workshop, where $350,000 would be designated for macro type projects. The idea here is to invest some city resources in partnership with private resources to encourage a commercial center to invest in a remodel of the exterior of their buildings. So we have a few distressed properties that would benefit from something like this. When looking at other cities, the most generous formula that I was able to find was something where the city would put 2/3 of the cost on the table, and the private property owner would put 1/3 on. That formula can be anything we want. So I saw others that were 50-50, and others where the city's investment was much smaller and the commercial investment was higher. I think sometimes it just doesn't pencil for the commercial owner to make that investment. I wish they would make that investment, because I think they would yield better tenant opportunities if they do. But this is because we have some one-time resources available, this is an opportunity to help ignite some of that investment in the community. And I think we have a couple of commercial corridors that would benefit. There's a micro component here too. The vision is that we would allocate up to $100,000, maybe in $5,000 or $10,000 increments, with criteria that you approve of. So we would bring you a program in draft, receive some feedback on it, and before we adopt a program like this. But we would also have micro grants available for repainting, new windows, awnings, signs, things like that.
And if something like this was implemented, we would have to put limits or on time for them to make whatever enhancements they're going to make on their buildings. It can't be a 5-year time where they finish in 5-10 years. It has to be within the year or something that they get that grant.
Right, and we would likely not provide them all the resources until they were complete, or it would be a reimbursement type of program. So you do the work, we'll reimburse you. So we'll structure it in a way that makes sure that they're held accountable. And then in the final item here is to create a storefront vandalism relief program. So we've experienced a number of broken windows in recent months that some of the commercial property owners have talked to me about. The city has previously had a program similar to this, where we did allocate some money for for businesses that experienced some vandalism, and primarily this was broken windows. This program would include broken windows, broken doors, broken locks, etching on windows, perhaps graffiti, and other elements. Funding could be available through fines that code enforcement levies, and also some of our reserves that we could apply. So, this may be a pilot program that starts at a $25,000 level of investment, with some limits on what those amounts would be for reimbursement. The chief mentioned this a little earlier. We may, as part of this program, if someone experiences some vandalism, we may want to tie, if they experienced it a second time, we may want to tie this program to, if you were interested in tapping it for a second time because something else happened, we would expect a certain level of investment in security or enhanced security at their building through the environmental design recommendations that the police department has for businesses. So we would bring you a program with various criteria. We would build and bake a better product and refine it to meet your expectations. And then we would measure it and adjust as needed.
And again, I think we discussed this, making it retroactive, because I have 4 businesses that have gotten their windows broken, some this month, prior months of this year. So.
Right. So to the mayor's point, this is a program that doesn't have to be prospective entirely. You could, for example, we could develop the criteria. We could, pick the date, whether it's January 1, 2023. If you have receipts and you meet the program criteria, and we validate that was a vandalism that would be eligible under this program, we could allocate funding for some of the businesses that have experienced some vandalism in recent months as well. Any questions on the entire Safe and Clean Streets initiative or feedback in general?
I think it's great. I think it's, yeah, I keep saying this, but it's time we clean up this city, and there's a lot of objectives in here that I think we can complete. And yes, it takes planning, it takes time, but we can do baby steps, and with everybody working together, it's time to clean up our city. So I thank you.
Good stuff.
Thank you. I'm convinced as well that as each of these ideas and investments come together, those incremental investments will start to yield change. I know we all want it to change in about 24 hours, but I think it may take 25. But as the small pieces come together, I think we're going to see changes over time, and those are all going to be positive. And so we look forward to bringing you progress reports on both the Safe and Clean Streets Initiative quarterly, as well as the entire work plan quarterly. So our first update would be probably the first meeting in October, and then followed by the first meeting in January, first meeting in April. Those would be the time that we bring updates to you, and we'll have a completed column and an in progress column. And at the end by the end of the fiscal year, the goal is to get everything done. So that's going to be our challenge as we move forward. So, Mayor, I think we've walked through each of the elements of our agenda today, and if there are any other questions, we're happy to answer those. Or
any questions from the audience, from the jury? Any questions? Yeah, I got a hand back there. Now, you want to come up and grab a mic, please? I'm hard of hearing. We have Lori Van Arsdale.
And I know I was late, so I know you talked about a lot of things before I got here. But, Mark, thank you so much, because so many of these things we used to do in times that were better, especially the cleanup, Jackie. That was a once-a-year thing that we did. It was called Hemet Beautiful. The whole town got together. We cleaned up all one big day. It was a great organization. Everything you're talking about, really, really, really appreciate it, and it's everything that we hear, and you guys already hear from the community. I just want to say thank you so much, and Mark, your outline made me real excited, especially on the graffiti part. Thank you.
Anyone else from the audience like to speak?
Hello. My name is Mario Richmond. I want to also thank you for taking the time. I can see that the city is taking a new direction. Mark, phenomenal presentation, very clear to the point, and it feels like the direction that the city is taking is absolutely positive going forward. Mayor, excellent work. And everybody else, we appreciate the meeting and thank you for the invitation.
Go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to make a comment on this. Is it possible that the different areas that we're highlighting in the strategic plan gets put on the wall at City Hall with the benchmarks and the progress we're making? I mean, besides being on our website, which people don't look at, but they do come to City Hall, and it would really be nice to see this is where we're going. These are the priorities. This is what's being accomplished. This is the goal. And just have it out there. Even have it out, put it on the wall of the library, put it at PD, put it at fire. Have
That's a
that
good point.
type of graphic on a wall that says, look what we're doing.
So it's there. Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that.
I like visuals.
The answer is yes, we'll do it. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, great. Uh-oh, did I lose? All right, any
And
other
on the,
questions from the audience? Noah, you don't have anything? Dale? Judy? Chief?
Real quick, I know collaboratively we work together on this, and it starts with the employees first. So as we embrace this moving forward, it's really going to benefit the city and all our employees in the future. So thanks to the city manager for pushing this forward. Thanks to the council for the support and bringing us more ideas to bring forward. I know this is just the beginning. So, you know, and I think Linda, or Councilmember Krupa, I apologize. And I know Councilmember Lilienthal talked about this too, is we are an old painting. We're not a master plan community. We got a lot of work to do, but we can do it. And it takes little brush strokes. So I'm excited. It's getting hot in here.
It's nice over here.
Thank you.
All right. Go ahead.
It's just a little thing, but like on the back of our business cards, all the city employees, can we put the those objectives on the back too? So when we hand them out, it's also another opportunity.
Just to elaborate on that, I had talked to her about putting city phone numbers for planning for every department we have. I seen that on one of the supervisors' cards. They had every number for the county that you would need to call. So that's what I think should be on there, and we discussed that already. So
As a QR.
there you go, QR code.
QR codes are good.
It's a good idea.
Anyone else? No hands? There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned to the next city council meeting on June 13th, 2023. Thank you for joining us today.